paying its own obeisances. Balaram's club paying obeisances spontaneously to Krishna. So Balaram, as we discussed, is the expert club fighter. And of course, he was famous for killing Pralambasura with his club. And he was famous for dispatching Rukmi with his club. So now Sri Rama is just using a small stick. And apparently he's defeated Balaram. We can read. When Krishna saw Balaram finally defeated by Sri Rama, who was using only a small stick, Krishna became filled with pleasure and began to look upon Sri Rama with great wonder. Krishna looking at Sri Rama with great wonder. What have you done? Amazing, astonishing. In this instance, there is a mixture of astonishment, fraternity, and chivalry in devotional service. The fraternity and chivalry are considered the parts, and the astonishment is considered the whole. You'll learn more about those various components as you go deeper into nectar devotion and deeper into your spiritual life. Nectar devotion is preventing us from being impersonalists. Now, we all want flavors from relationships in the material world, but we would never dream that the relationships in the spiritual world have, at the top, most portion of the spiritual world, have so many flavors, mixtures. Okay, defeated Krishna in play. As we said before, it's not so much victory or defeat that's important in Braj Leela. What's important is the supreme pleasure. Rama is another name for Balaram, one who gives pleasure through pastimes. Oh, this is funny. This is a further feature of ecstatic love for Krishna. And what is that further feature of ecstatic love for Krishna? Envy. Sometimes people ask, is there envy in the spiritual world? There's not envy like we know it. Everything in Krishna's pastimes by his devotees increases Krishna's pleasure. So listen, for the example of envy in purity. Sometimes when the cowherd boys used to play in the forest of Vrindavan, Krishna would play on one side and Balaram would play on another. There would be competition and mock fighting between the two parties. And when Krishna's party was defeated by Balaram, the boys would say, if Balaram's party remains victorious, then who in the world can be weaker than ourselves? This is another instance of envy in ecstatic love. You can all meditate on that. If Balaram's party remains victorious, then who in this world is weaker than ourselves? Another example is given about the gopis and Srimati Radharani. But this is Balaram's appearance day, so we'll focus on Balaram. Just thought I would tease you a bit there. But on your own, you'll read Nectar Devotion. Next, we have an example of Indra crying. Why is he crying? Because Krishna is playing his flute. And that flute playing is affecting even the higher planets. In the Vidugdha Madhava, that's a book by Rupa Goswami, there's the following statement. When Krishna was playing on his flute, Baladev very anxiously declared, "Just see, after hearing the transcendental sound of Krishna's flute, Indra, the king of heaven, is crying in his heavenly kingdom. And from his teardrops falling on the ground, Vrindavan appears to have become a celestial residence for the demigods." Of course, Vrindavan is much more than the celestial residence for the demigods. The demigods' planetary system is part of the material world, but Vrindavan is not part of the material world. But it's a way of glorifying Vrindavan. And Balaram is speaking like that. He's using examples that are considered topmost in the material world in order to glorify Vrindavan, which is out of the material world. So in the material world, people think, oh, Indra, the heavenly planets, how great. But he's saying when Krishna plays his flute, Indra is crying on his heavenly planet, and the teardrops are falling on the ground, making Vrindavan appear to have become a celestial residence for the demigods. And of course, as we said, Vrindavan is far beyond the mortal scope of the devatas, the demigods. So now we'll go to a section briefly describing Balaram's dress, which is bluish. What happens to it? He's famous for his blue dress, just like Krishna's famous for his yellow dress. This is another quality of Krishna, number 43, all famous. When the great sage Narada was chanting the glories of the Lord, the bluish line on the neck of Lord Shiva disappeared. Upon seeing this, Gauri, the wife of Lord Shiva, suspected Lord Shiva of being someone else disguised as her husband. And out of fear, she immediately left his company. Now, what about Balaram? Upon hearing the chanting of Krishna's name, Lord Balaram saw that his dress had become white, although he was generally accustomed to a bluish dress. And the cowherd girls saw all the water of the Yamuna River turn into milk. So they began to churn it into butter. In other words, by the spreading of Krishna consciousness or the glories of Krishna, everything became white and pure. Let's see what else what other gems we can find for you. Oh, this is funny. Yes. This is in the chapter entitled Further Features of Ecstatic Love for Krishna. What is one of those further features of ecstatic love? Sleepiness. But not the sleepiness like we know. Listen to this. Once Lord Baladev began to talk in his sleep as follows. "O lotus-eyed Krishna, your childhood adventures are manifest simply according to your own will. Therefore, please immediately dispose of the stubborn pride of this Kaliya serpent." There you have it. Balaram talking in his sleep. By saying this, Lord Baladev astonished the assembly of the Yadus and made them laugh for some time. Evidently, the Yadus, some or other, were witnessing Balaram talking in his sleep. But it goes on. after talking in his sleep and saying that, then yawning so hard as to make ripples on his abdomen, Lord Baladev, the bearer of the plow, returned to his deep sleep. You can try that. I don't know what it looks like. Yawning so hard as to make ripples on your abdomen. Yeah, do it. So Balaram, after displaying this ecstasy of sleepiness, talking in his sleep, then yawns in such an extraordinary way, and then goes back to deep sleep. So Prabhupada points out this is an instance of sleepiness in ecstatic love. We've spoken about Balaram's club. Very important. It's a paraphernalia he's famous for. He also carries a plow. That's why he has the name Haladara, the one who carries a plow. And when I speak to the Gita Nagari farm community, I'll talk more about Balaram and his plow and how Balaram is Krishi Raksha, land protection, and Krishna is Goraksha, cow protection. So I'll explain more at that time how Krishna always carries a rope on his shoulder for binding the back legs of the cow so the cow can be milked peacefully without kicking. And what does Balaram always carry? A plow for plowing the land, showing that he's in charge of land protection. Krishna's in charge of cow protection. So as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Krishi Goraksha Vanijam Vaishya Karma Swabhavajam. The activities of the Vaishas, the real merchants. Real merchants are farmers, according to Krishna. Their activities consist primarily of cow protection and land protection. Then we have a case of Balaram's angry stare. Perhaps you can remember staring at someone with complete wrath. I hope it's just a brief moment. Balaram's hot eyes when he's angry are famous. Here's one example. When Jarasandha angrily attacked the city of Mathura, he looked at Krishna with sarcastic glances. At that time, Baladev took up his plow weapon and gazed upon Jarasandha with colored eyes. His eyes were red with anger. Everything Balaram does is significant. When his eyes turn color, when he talks in his sleep, when he yawns. This is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan. Nothing is insignificant. Nothing is inconsequential. What about, we talked about envy, we've talked about anger, we talked about ecstasy and sleepiness. What about intoxication? Such an essential activity in today's life. What's the origin of the intoxicated state? Bhagavatam informs us, Janmadi Yasyataha, the absolute truth, is that from which everything emanates. So in the ultimate source, there must be romance, there must be combat, and there must be intoxication. Let's hear about that. It's very interesting. But you'll hear Prabhupada explain that Rupa Goswami doesn't get too much into it. Descriptions of intoxication. Because, well, there's no necessity for such discussion. Sorry, folks. But we'll read what is there. What is there? Always remembering that the pastimes of Krishna and Balaram are unlimited. When one becomes arrogant with false prestige due to drinking intoxicants or being too lustful, the voice becomes faulty, the eyes become swollen, and there are symptoms of redness on the body. There is a statement in the Lalita Madhava that Lord Baladev, intoxicated from drinking excessive quantities of honey, once began to address the ants. Oh, you king of the ants, why are you hiding yourself? Oh, you kings of the ants, why are you hiding yourselves in these holes? At the same time, Balaram also addressed the king of heaven. O King Indra, you plaything of Shachi. That's Indra's wife. Why are you laughing? I am now prepared to smash the whole universe. And I know that Krishna will not be angry with me. Then he addressed Krishna. My dear Krishna, tell me immediately why the whole world is trembling and why the moon has become elongated. Balaram's really intoxicated. And oh, you members of the Yadu dynasty, why are you laughing at me? Please give me back my liquors made of honey from the Kadamba flower. As I said, Janmadaya Sutta, everything originates in the supreme absolute truth. Srila Rupa Goswami prays that Lord Balaram will be pleased with all of us while he is thus talking just like an intoxicated person. You would never think that you would ask the blessings of someone, hoping they'll be pleased with you while they're talking in the madness of intoxication. But for Balaram, yes, we beg, please be pleased upon us in your intoxicated state. Addressing the ants, why are you hiding in your holes? Addressing Indra, you plaything of your wife. I'm ready to smash the whole universe. No one can stop me. I know Krishna won't mind if I smash the whole universe. Yadu dynasty, why are you laughing at me? Give me back my liquors made of honey from Kadamba flowers. Now, another quality of Krishna is he's shy, he's bashful. And you'll see that in reference to Balaram. Krishna thinks that Balaram might know his secret thoughts. And so he was bashful. What are those secret thoughts? Krishna didn't want Balaram to know. This is more intimate than the Brahma Vimohana Leela, where Krishna hid from Balaram how he had replaced the calves, cows, and cowherd boys. So this is in the qualities of Sri Krishna further explained. Shy. A person who sometimes exhibits humility and bashfulness is called shy. As described in the Lalita Madhav, another book by Rupa Goswami, Krishna's shyness was manifested when he lifted Govardhan Hill by the little finger of his left hand. All of the gopis were observing Krishna's wonderful achievement, and Krishna was also smiling at seeing the gopis. When Krishna's glance went over the breasts of the gopis, his hand began to shake. And upon seeing his hand shake, all the cowherd men underneath the hill became a little disturbed. Remember, Krishna had invited the whole village of Vrindavan to come under the Govardhan Hill after Krishna lifted it. But now the hill is shaking because Krishna is eyeing certain aspects of the forms of the gopis. But it doesn't end there. Then there was a tumultuous roaring sound because the hill was shaking. And all the cowherd people began to pray to Krishna for safety because the hill is shaking. And you know why the hill is shaking, because Krishna is looking at something very attractive. At this time, Lord Balaram was smiling, thinking that these cowherd men, now get this, Balaram is smiling, thinking that the cowherd men had been frightened by the shaking of Govardhan Hill. Balaram is smiling because he knows Krishna is invincible. It's just his pastime to make the hills shake. So he's smiling. What are they worried about? What is Krishna thinking when he sees Balaram smile? What's Krishna thinking? But seeing Balaram smile, Krishna thought that Balaram had understood his mind in observing the breasts of the gopis, and he immediately became bashful. There's another incident of Krishna, little Krishna, Bal Gopal, running to Balaram on his stealing, Krishna's stealing. This is in the chapter called Laughing Ecstasy. There's been sleeping ecstasy, there's been intoxication ecstasy, now there's laughing ecstasy. When one is smiling, but his teeth are not visible, one can distinctly mark a definite change in the eyes and in the cheeks. This is called smita, smiling. Just like we have our smita kanti, Devi Dasi. So smita is smiling. Once, when Krishna was stealing yogurt, Jayanti, the head mistress of the house, could detect his activities, and she was therefore coming very hurriedly to catch him. At that time, Krishna became very much afraid of Jayanti and went to his elder brother Baladev. He said, "My dear brother, I have stolen yogurt. Just see, Jayanti is coming hurriedly to catch me." "My dear brother, I've stolen yogurt, and she's coming to get me." When Krishna was thus seeking the shelter of Baladev because he was being chased by Jayanti, all the great sages in the heavenly planets began to smile. This smiling is called smita. Smita smiling. Nectar Devotion will go on to explain there are other types of smiling, like hasita smiling, smiling in which the teeth are slightly visible. Whereas this smita smiling is when you smile, but your teeth are not visible, but someone can detect a distinct change in your eyes and your cheeks, even though your teeth are not visible. You see how detailed Rupa Goswami's presentation is, letting you know the spiritual world is full of endless variety. We're so attached to material varieties. We want to be entertained, we want to be fulfilled. But as we read Nectar Devotion, we see nothing compares to the real varieties and their master, Krishna. And of course, Balaram is Krishna's first expansion. So Balaram is always Krishna's well-wisher. And we spoke about how he didn't want Krishna to go to the Kaliya lake. He's telling that, remember, to Subal. Tell him stay back. Mother Yashoda and I want to bathe him because it's his birthday. So he's assuming a parental role, which is subordinate to his primary relationship of fraternity, Sakyaras. We discussed in the beginning about Balaram's mixed relationship. Srila Rupa Goswami states herein that according to some learned scholars, the three kinds of transcendental mellow so far described, namely servitude, fraternity, and parental affection, are sometimes mixed. For example, the fraternal feelings of Balaram are mixed with servitude and parental affection. And we spoke in the very beginning how in Braj Leela, especially in the childhood pastimes, you see Krishna and Balaram acting more or less equal. But in Mathura and Dwarka, remember, we spoke about how the relationship becomes more of Balaram acting like the elder brother. So I hope that we've given you some impetus to read Nectar of Devotion, not overlook it. I think that sometimes devotees forget it. But during the days in ISKCON when Prabhupada was physically present, every evening there would be Bhagavad Gita class and Nectar Devotion class. And what would happen is that the speaker would read from Nectar Devotion for 10 minutes, maybe comment on it a little bit, take some questions, and then would go to Bhagavad Gita. So this was the common practice. It may be that over the course of time, the emphasis on Nectar Devotion has diminished. Of course, if you're studying Bhakti Shastri, you definitely read Nectar Devotion. But it's a book that needs to be looked at regularly because your appreciation of it, as we explained, will increase. Your realization of it will increase as your service attitude develops. So I just wanted to stimulate your appetite on Balaram's appearance day. I hope you've gotten an insight into the glories of Nectar Devotion, Srila Prabhupada's rendition of Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. One of the many tasks that I'm trying to do is, on behalf of the BBT, work on a well done version of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It'll be like 5 volumes. But we already have Prabhupada's Nectar devotion. But devotees often like to see the points in Nectar devotion as they're in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, because the size of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the original, will be much bigger. Prabhupada gave us a summary study. Sometimes devotees who like reading, they want, let's see how Rupa Goswami expanded upon this point. But for most of you, working as householders with family, Nectar devotion, if you read that again and again, you'll benefit so much. All right. So I thank you all for your kind attention. And it's really been wonderful talking about Lord Balaram. I'm looking at all the faces. I see my sister present, keeping an eye on me. If anyone wants to see, if you can see on the bottom of your screen, you'll see someone named Linda. She's offering pranams. We hope that soon I won't have to call her Linda. So let us continue begging today for Lord Balaram's mercy. New Zealand time tonight at 6:30. I'll be giving class for parts of the UK, especially Wales. And then Sunday evening, I'll be giving a class for Gita Nagari, and I'll be stressing probably more the agricultural aspects of Lord Balaram to enliven the inhabitants of the cowherd village of Gita Nagari. All right, I'm looking at all the faces. This is how I get my association during lockdown. I know you Americans and Canadians think it's crazy. In New Zealand, they locked the whole country down after finding one case of COVID. I think over the days, it's up to 50 now or so. These are very unsettled times for all parts of the world, and everyone needs to do what they can do to be safe. Srila Prabhupada said, first is health and sadhana. So keep that in mind. Again, looking at the faces. In mind. All right. Shri Balaramaji ki. Jai Baladev. Give us spiritual strength.